We are now in the fourth part of the 30 Years War series. This one is called Lützen. So let's see. I'm actually looking forward to seeing more of Gustavus. Dude really impressed me last time, and he seems to be now the main head of the Protestant side. And he seems to be finally the game changer for the Protestants. So I'm really looking forward to seeing more about him, you know?
In our previous video, we detailed the intervention in the 30 Years' War by the Swedish king Gustavus Adolphus and his decisive victory at the Battle of Breitenfeld in the summer of 1631. The experienced veteran army of the Holy Roman Emperor Ferdinand II had been almost totally destroyed, and the Protestant forces were on the rise. However, the war was not over, and 1632 would prove to be the most intense year of fighting that the 30 Years' War would produce, culminating at the Battle of Lützen. Swedish King Gustavus Adolphus was now at the peak of his popularity in the Protestant world after his glorious victory at Breitenfeld. He was now the Lion of the North, a new Hercules or Alexander, destined to bring greatness. It was
Oh boy. Okay. That's a lot of hype. I'm kind of worried now something will happen to the guy. Hopefully not. Actually, I'm kind of becoming quite the fan. I kind of also like just the way he his combined arms with his army. Like, very Alexander-esque, you know what I mean? So, there is a lot of great comparison there. And the Lion of the North is just a cool nickname, you kidding me?
It's true that he had achieved significant success since his intervention, but the war was not won yet.
You can't count out
he
the
now
Catholics.
Had competing needs, defending the Baltic coast beachhead from attack, keeping the wavering Saxons from making peace, and further pushing his already gained advantage. He had also failed to eliminate his principal enemy, Johann Surklaas Graf von Thiel, who escaped with the shattered remnant of his army west through Westphalia and then south into Franconia to join his reinforcements. Due to his insecure supply lines, the difficulty of operating in Catholic territory, and the insecurity of his Protestant allies, direct pursuit of the enemy was not an option at this moment. The Swedish king eventually decided on thrusting southwest through Thuringia and into the Rhine-Main Valley, the so-called Clerics' Alley, a string of Catholic territories. He wanted to seize as much land as possible before winter came, as this would possibly allow allies in the south, such as Hessen-Kassel and Württemberg, to join his army.
Does this sound
Yeah, Gustavus has a lot going he needs to accomplish, right? Like, protecting his territory, keeping the Protestants all in line, defeating Thiel. He has so much to do, that's the thing. Like, I'm wondering if he's gonna succeed in all these tasks or not.
Opposition was unexpectedly weak in this region, and cities began to surrender one by one. Erfurt fell on October 2nd, while the wealthy bishopric of Würzburg surrendered on the 15th, its garrison pleading for mercy, while the Protestants responded with Magdeburg's quarter. After resting for a brief while, the Swedes seized Frankfurt. Gustavus Adolphus crossed the Rhine at Oppenheim, and finally took the electoral capital at Mainz on the 23rd of December, the seat of the Archbishop-Elector of the Empire. Heidelberg and the rest of the Lower Palatinate, which had started this entire conflict, was conquered in the subsequent weeks. Meanwhile, the war had expanded even further. Hans-Georg von Arnim, who had previously fought for Wallenstein, advanced into Bohemia at the head of a large Saxon army and recaptured Prague for the Protestant cause. During the invasion of Bohemia, Arnim made contact with Wallenstein, which almost led to peace between the Emperor and Saxony, but these talks fell through.
I wonder what Wallenstein's thinking of the sudden shift in power. I wonder if Valentine's gonna come back. Like, maybe Ferdinand's gonna be like, you know what, I have Teal, but I need my boy back. I need Valenston, and I'm wondering if he's gonna get called back, or if he's really just not gonna be a player again. It would be kind of sad if he doesn't, but you never know with history, right? So yeah. I'm wondering what he's thinking about all of this, you know? And, yeah, things are going really well for the Protestants. They have Prong back. Again, like, just the tide has turned, but we're not done yet. As we know with history, things can change in a dime, you know?
Beginning of 1632, Gustavus Adolphus commanded the main strike force of 16,000 at Mainz, while Marshal Horn was leading 10,000 to subdue local Catholic garrisons in Franconia. The Catholics of the Empire were now panicking. Thiel's confidence had been shattered by Breitenfeld, and he now avoided battle and was resented by his soldiers, with the Imperial army being crammed into Bavaria. Swedish forces were resting in fresh church lands. Though the main Swedish and Imperial armies were relatively localized, it was at this point in the war that conflagrations began to erupt all around Germany. Emboldened Protestants and Catholics began to raise smaller armies, which fought against each other all over the country, whilst the Swedes began to dispatch smaller armies as well, causing massive devastation and human suffering. Skirmishes continued between Arnhem's Saxons and the Imperials near Bohemia, and Imperial Marshal zu Pappenheim conducted a brilliant campaign in the north, rescuing thousands of Imperial troops who were trapped in besieged cities such as Magdeburg and Stade, whilst destroying Protestant contingents many times the size of his own.
Yeah, I think we're seeing the violence and the human suffering escalate as everyone's jumping in now, right? And so many of this population are just being slaughtered and all these captures and stuff. My goodness.
Swedish Marshal Gustav Horn attacked Bamberg and Thiel, who now seemingly charged into action. They called in garrisons from the nearby Upper Palatinate and Bavarian militia, and attacked Horn's besieging force on March 9th, who lost a third of his army. Hearing of the defeat, and worried that it might make the wavering Protestant Germans desert him, Gustavus Adolphus marched from Mainz, reunited with Horn, and entered Nuremberg. To the south was the powerful Bavaria, led by Maximilian I. It was cut in two by the Danube River, and the Swedish king could not afford to slice his force in two to attack both the northern and southern portions. So he chose to conquer the south, due to the presence of the rich electoral capital at Munich in that part of the electorate.
Oh boy.
This would require him to cross the Lech River.
Alright, we're getting a rematch between Till and Gustavus. Both very good commanders. And I guess we'll see who's gonna come out on top. Till did lose the last one, but I don't want to count him out just yet. So we'll see, man.
He chose to move towards the city of Rhein, where Thiel had entrenched with 21,000 men and 20 guns. The Lech was a bifurcated river, split into a series of parallel fast-flowing streams, each around 60 to 80 meters wide, while the Bavarian bank consisted of submerged woods and marshland, a formidable obstacle. The only viable route across for the large Swedish force was around 5 kilometers south of Rhine, where there was a large island splitting the river. Gustavus meanwhile drew up his army and cannon on the open ground opposite Thiel's encampment, and began to bombard the Imperial forces with his numerically superior guns. He also sent a small feint force to make Thiel think he would cross there. Slightly further south, at the main crossing point, musketeers and more artillery began to converge on the island, ready for the crossing and attack.
Alright, I see what Gustavus is doing. He's really trying to get the one-up on him. And great false ploy here to get Thiel to focus. Again, like, there's a lot going on, and I'm impressed by Gustavus. I guess we'll see if his crossing is successful.
At dawn, The units on the island began to burn straw and gunpowder in order to make a smokescreen, which made visibility minimal. In the midst of this shroud, a small Finnish unit crossed to the Bavarian bank and secured a minor beachhead, floating a prefabricated bridge across to the island in order for the main army to make the crossing. They began to make their way across the pontoon bridge under the cover of cannon shot from both the island and the west bank of the river. Thiel dispatched troops to the area immediately as he learned of the Swedish crossing at the main point.
Okay, so here's the thing now. That was smart. Like, Gustavus was cunning in his exchange there. It seemed to get the one up on Thiel, but now Thiel has gotten... He's wisened up to this, and now is attacking before the full army is crossing. So unless the army can repel Thiel and cross, this is where either Gustavus wins or lose, right? Like, often we've seen, like, armies when they're crossing rivers, it's never advantageous for them, because, you know, crossing a river, you can get isolated from the rest of the army, essentially divide and conquer as the enemy takes out chunks of you. I mean, one of the more famous examples is when, Napoleon tried crossing, and Archduke Charles attacked his army as they were crossing, inflicting a severe loss. So, yeah, again, crossings are never good for an army if they're getting jumped. So unless the Swedish discipline can overcome and drive off the enemy, all Till has to do is, like, defeat them here, right?
Realizing he had been fooled, a fierce fight developed in the area near Thiel's camp, and it seemed indecisive at first, with the Swedish still half crossing the bridge.
But look at the horses here. Are they about to flank Thiel?
However, unknown to the Imperials, a small 2,000-strong elite Swedish cavalry force had crossed the Lech 2 kilometers further to the south, and smashed into the flanks and rear of the Imperial formation.
The flank, the oldest trick in the book, comes in handy once again. Like, he really did 2 flanks at the same time. The main army right here trying to do that, and then this portion of horsemen. Like, Gustavus, man. The man is so far been one step ahead of Thiel the entire time.
Leading to their collapse. In the midst
and again, Thiel is not an idiot. Like, Thiel was impressive in his own right. It's just Gustavus, I think, is proving to be the better commander. Though that's not a diss on Thiel, because Thiel was very competent on his own. It's just, he met someone better, I guess.
Thiel, who had commanded since the Battle of White Mountain, was mortally wounded by a cannonball and perished 2 weeks later.
Oh, that's a big loss. Because Thiel, alongside Wallenstein, were kind of the 2 main leaders of the armies of Ferdinand. I think you need to call back Wallenstein. I think that might be your best hope now. Because Gustavus has proven to be the game changer for the Protestants.
Command went to Maximilian I, who ordered a retreat from the unsalvageable situation. Attempts at diplomacy to call on Catholic France, Lorraine and Spain for help had failed, so the Emperor's forces finally realized there was no other choice than to recall the military genius Albrecht von Wallenstein back to service.
Dude, I want to watch Gustavus battle Wallenstein. Like, Wallenstein proved to be the genius of Ferdinand. He was Ferdinand's boy, as I call him. His main man. So, it seems like, you know, he's gonna join back up. And if he does, I want to see him fight Gustavus. I want to see who will come out on top, because these guys seem like both geniuses.
Though they might dislike him. On the 13th of April 1632, Wallenstein was formally reinstated as the supreme commander of imperial forces. Immediately, Wallenstein began to...
Okay, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Someone like Wallenstein could not be left out forever. He had to come back. I kind of like that I'm not really rooting for anybody. I'm kind of, like I said, I'm watching this with neutral curiosity. I'm just kind of admiring the exploits I admired Wallenstein, and I'm admiring Gustavus, so yeah, like I said, I kind of just want to see the battle between these two. Hopefully there's a battle between these two. There has to be, right? There has to be. If not, I'm gonna be very sad.
Mobilize his vast resources in Bohemia, rebuilding shattered imperial regiments and stockpiling military resources. Within weeks of his reinstatement, he was ready to march. His appointment had an impact almost immediately, and by the end of May he had recaptured Prague from the Saxons, and by late spring had forced them out of Bohemia.
Dang.
He now held the initiative, and could either threaten Saxony or strike at the Swedish king.
Okay. Again, the speed he's moving at. Get his army back, get Prague back, help, get rid of the Protestants in Bohemia. He's moving quick. He is taking the initiative, which is always what you want to take in these battles. He is taking it back into his own hands. Gustavus, has to move really quick to counter this man. He must.
And moved to the west with around 32,000 men after leaving troops to guard Bohemia. Meanwhile, back west, the Catholic populations were beginning to realize that easily surrendering would mean expropriation, extortion, and persecution, so resistance began to mount. Wallenstein now arrived in the region with his larger force, reuniting with his old rival Maximilian's shattered army at Eger on July 1st. Knowing their precarious position, both men knew they could not afford disunity and were respectful to one another. Realizing that Gustavus Adolphus was a formidable commander, Wallenstein's tactics were extremely cautious, aware that another major defeat could mean the end of the Imperium.
They're about to fight. Yes, this came even sooner than I expected, and I love it. The Battle of the Mustaches. Granted, it seems like Gustavus has more than just a mustache. It looks like he has a bit of a beard on his chin. I could be wrong, but either way, he does have a mustache. So it's the Battle of the Mustaches. Dang, I wish I had grown my mustache for this series. If only I had known. But yeah. Okay, I'm hyped. This is the battle between the Titans right here.
Pause. In July, instead of attacking the king's entrenched position, Wallenstein moved into a heavily fortified position of his own, anchored on a medieval castle called Alta Vesta. His fortifications were so intense that they required the felling of 13,000 trees and the shifting of 21,000 modern truckloads of earth.
Dang.
It was the 17th century equivalent of World War I, with sharpened and trimmed tree branches pointing at the enemy to skewer them.
My goodness. Yeah, Wallenstein ain't taking no... Wait, it was Wallenstein who did that, right?
In July, instead of attacking the king's entrenched position, Wallenstein moved into a heavily fortified position of his own, anchored on a medieval castle called Alta Vesta. His fortifications were so intense that they required the felling of 13...
Yeah, that's an interesting move. The king is just sitting here, but Wallenstein's like, no, I'm gonna take the defensive, and builds this. What is he planning?
1,000 trees and the shifting of 21,000 modern truckloads of earth. It was the 17th century equivalent of World War I, with sharpened and trimmed tree branches pointing at the enemy to skewer them. Imperial garrisons commanded the roads into Nuremberg, while cavalry patrolled the countryside. Rather than a direct assault, Wallenstein would starve the Swedes out.
Wallenstein is being cautious, and rightfully so. He knows a full-on pitched battle. If he loses, it's the end, right? So it makes sense he's being more cautious. But, that's the thing. Gustavus is a very formidable enemy, and a cunning man on his own. Surely he'll have a response to this, or try to do something to this.
Indeed, the situation was initially far better in the Imperial camp, as they were able to be resupplied from many directions. However, the hot August weather changed all that. So many troops in such a small space spread rats, flies, and ultimately disease. The Imperial army became non-operational after the Swedes managed to capture a supply column, and Wallenstein was unable to intercept a Swedish relief army of 24,000 men and 3,000 supply wagons sent by Chancellor Axel Oxenstierna to join their king at Nuremberg.
Dang.
Meanwhile, to the north, the Battle of Steinau resulted in a Saxon victory. However, Wallenstein sent one of his captains, Heinrich Hulk, to punish Saxony with a 10,000-strong raiding force. He plundered, raped, and pillaged mercilessly through the countryside.
Poor average people, guys. They're just trying to live their lives, and all these armies are running around extorting them, killing them, raping them. Like, I'm telling you, I keep saying this, but it sucks to just be an ordinary person in the past. Because you can be in a village, in a town, you're just chilling, you get raided, you get besieged, and then you get killed or raped or slavery, or just... It sucked. You know what I mean? It just sucked to be the everyday person. Like us, I was assuming. Unless any of you are leaders or military men, we're just average Joes, right? It would suck for us.
And was widely known as the master of warfare by devastation. His campaign through Saxony in 1632 earned his troops a reputation for appalling savagery.
My goodness, Hulk smash, definitely, dude. Man. Insane.
Around Nuremberg, the Swedes now had 28,000 infantry, 17,000 cavalry, and 175 cannon, while Wallenstein had 31,000 infantry and 12,000 horsemen. It was the strongest army Gustavus Adolphus had ever commanded, and he would use it to try to break the imperial defences. Attempts at surprise proved impossible, as the enemy alerted Wallenstein upon the Swedish capture of the Rednitz river crossings at Fürth on the 1st of September. Gustavus Adolphus wanted to pin the majority of the imperial defenders with a withering artillery barrage from the east bank of the Rednitz, while he attacked from the north. Though an initial artillery strike failed to silence the imperial guns, the Swedish king attacked anyway. He sent his infantry up the slope, but rainfall had made the ground slippery, hindering the assault and making taking the regimental guns with them impossible. He continued and renewed the attack repeatedly into the night, feeding more and more troops in. They got as far as the outer fortifications when the king decided to retreat, losing 1,000 killed and 1,400 badly wounded. Believing that Wallenstein, whose army was suffering from diseases and lack of horses, no longer represented an immediate threat, Gustavus Adolphus marched south towards Swabia.
Oh dang, that was an interesting encounter. It wasn't the pitched battle I was hoping for, but it's interesting that the King Gustavus was pinned down, but Wallenstein's defensive caution ended up making the situation turn against him with disease and whatnot, leading to him being on the back foot. But then the weather saved Wallenstein, right? Or played a big part in it, as Gustavus, was unsuccessful, and now has just bailed. I'm wondering though if his assertion of Wallenstein's weakness is correct or not. If not, then he's made a big blunder, right? Leaving Wallenstein alone. But, we'll see.
In the hopes that his enemy would be either forced to chase him or would stay and wait for reinforcements. However, Wallenstein recovered very quickly, broke camp, and marched north to crush Saxony. The Swedish king quickly realized...
Yes, Gustavus has blundered. I think he's finally met his match. Wallenstein and Gustavus are oh my goodness, who's gonna get the one up? So far now, Gustavus has made a critical error, and Wallenstein is just gonna go and, destroy Saxony. So, my goodness. And again, Gustavus needs to keep up his good publicity to keep the Protestants on his side. He had to earn them being on his side, you know? So, him making big mistakes will only affect him even more, you know?
Realized his mistake, as the Imperial commander was now not only endangering his main Saxon ally, but was also threatening his Baltic communication and supply bridgehead. So he raced north, covering a massive 650 kilometers in 17 days, hoping to force a battle. After dispersing his own troops into their countryside winter quarters, Wallenstein halted at Lützen. When he realized the Swedes were closing in on him, he attempted to recall his soldiers urgently, but did not manage to bring his entire army back in time.
Dang, just the constant shifting the pendulum. I'm sorry, I'm hyped, guys. I'm loving this. I was a little disappointed with that last encounter. It wasn't a full-on pitched battle, but this seems to now be the pitched battle, or maybe not the pitched battle. Wait, he seems pinned down. But either way, encounter number 2. Between these two guys, they're playing chess with each other, and Gustavus seems to have the advantage once again, as Wallenstein was not expecting him to force march and haul butt to get to him.
He attempted to recall his soldiers. Wallenstein halted at Lützen. When he realized the Swedes were closing in on him, he attempted to recall his soldiers urgently, but did not manage to bring his entire army back in time. Wallenstein anchored his line on the Leipzig Post Road. North of the road were 3 windmills, standing on a shallow hill, which would serve as an emplacement for the right-wing Imperial artillery battery. Further to the Imperial right, a ring of gardens full of man-high mud walls surrounded Lützen, which would be ideal shelter for musketeers. Wallenstein drew up his roughly 16,000 strong initial force in a defensive battle formation, compact, deep, and allowing for the transfer of units between the wings. The Imperial infantry, no longer deployed in tercios, were arrayed in 3 battle lines. 5 regiments were in the first line, 2 in the second, and 1 in reserve. The cavalry was mostly on the wings, formed up in a reverse bow shape to prevent encirclement.
The loss of the tercios is the one that gets me. That was kind of the big strategy and why the Spanish were such a dominant force. So it's interesting that he doesn't want to deploy them in that position, you know? I guess he's responding to the change of circumstances and must be aware of Gustavus's innovations and is trying to make his own. We'll see, though.
Croat light horse formed a forward screen on the wings, while heavy black-armoured cuirassiers formed the main hammer and arquebusiers sat behind them. Taking advantage of Swedish tactics, Wallenstein placed 150 musketeers in front of each cavalry wing, though not in the Swedish style.
He's putting his own twist on it, and again Wallenstein sees the strength of the Swedish and now is making his own innovations to counter or try to utilize it. A mark of a great leader and general, you know, evolving, right? Boy, how's this gonna go, man? I'm telling you, this is the meeting of 2 great men. Like, I don't know, this could go either way. Like, I don't even know at this point who can win or who will win.
Imperial cannon were deployed in 2 main batteries. The aforementioned windmill battery, which contained 14 to 17 guns, and the left wing battery, which was emplaced in a lower lying ditch and contained 6 or 7 guns. Meanwhile, on the approach, the Swedish king led prayers and gave rousing speeches to both his Scandinavian and German troops, harried all the way by Imperial Croat light raiders. At around 8:30 to 9 AM, the armies caught sight of one another, and the Swedes began to cross the Frostgraben River with makeshift bridges. After they had made the crossing, the 19,000-strong Swedish army formed up into the traditional 2-line battle formation, with intervals between each unit to allow retreat to the rear. During combat, regimental artillery occupied this gap. The king commanded the position of honour on the right wing, while Duke Bernard commanded the left and Kniphausen held the reserve. The battle began with an hour-long artillery exchange, during which neither side suffered serious casualties. At the same time, Wallenstein set Lützen ablaze in order to prevent it falling into Swedish hands and to prevent them from turning his right flank. The Swedish king, fearing being outflanked himself, commanded Kniphausen to send some of his reserve to bolster the right-wing cavalry. Finally, with the sounding of a trumpet, the entire Swedish line began to slowly advance as one. On the right, the first decisive action came when Gustavus Adolphus commanded his Finnish cavalry to attack the Croats and Cuirassiers, while the king stayed with his infantry. This worked out, and the right wing of the Swedes swept the Imperial left from the field.
Okay, the Imperial left is so far seemingly looks like it's about to collapse, so Wallenstein no doubt is going to send reinforcements and push them back out, right?
However, Gottfried zu Pappenheim arrived on the battlefield with an additional 3,000 cavalry and steadied the situation there. While they had stopped the Swedish flanking attack, Pappenheim was hit by a cannonball during the charge and passed away not long after.
Dang, holy crap.
In the centre, the Swedish infantry regiments advanced and were hammered by Imperial artillery and entrenched musketeers. But these were elite units, so they continued to advance and eventually gained the road and the left-wing Imperial battery.
Okay, so far, let's see. On the Imperial left, pretty bad start, but they managed to stabilize the situation. The center, just these elite troops seem to be wrecking shop, though I think Wallenstein's reorganization of these three lines of musketeers might prove to be beneficial. I mean, we'll see, I don't know, but I'm assuming they're about to take advantage of the Swedish, like, thin, non-layered lines. I guess we'll see, I don't know, but, yeah.
On the left, Duke Bernard had a difficult situation. He had to advance on the heavily fortified Lützen Gardens and the Windmill Battery, which was bristling with Imperial cannon. Harried by Croat light horse as he moved, Bernard's cavalry and some infantry supporting them advanced under the smokescreen created by the burning city. As they reached the miller's house just in front of the road, a fierce engagement began which would last for hours. The defining action of this battle would take place on the Swedish right flank. Gustavus Adolphus.
Okay, Gustavus is joining the battle personally. Oh boy.
Seeing his troops having trouble, personally led an attack with some of his Smålander cavalry, but was shot in the arm and severely injured.
Oh no!
As this father of modern warfare was being led away by an aide to the rear, an Imperial cuirassier emerged from the mist, recognized the king, and shot him in the back. Outnumbered by the Imperial cavalry, Gustavus's entourage fled, leaving him alone. When Wallenstein's cuirassiers asked the injured king who he was, he answered, "I was the King of Sweden," and was then fatally shot in the temple.
Holy crap. That's how he goes? Oh my goodness. I apologize. I didn't expect that. Holy crap. Holy crap, dude. This is why I love history. This is better than any fictional show or novel. Real life, you can't predict it. Like, it's insane. Wow. I'm sorry. That caught me off guard, guys. I'm so sorry. That was wild. I can't believe that's how he went. I thought he was gonna be a long a longer standing player, and he was basically the champion of the Protestants. With him gone, what chance do the Protestants have anymore? Like, Wallenstein is going to destroy everyone now on the Protestant side, unless a new genius arises. What's with the trend of Swedish, like, commanders and kings showing up, being great, and then just getting killed? Like, you know what I mean? Like, wow. That's insane. That's GG. Wallenstein's got this. Dang. Maybe should have stayed behind, huh? I just can't believe that's how he went out. I thought he was going to be a longer standing player.
Gustavus Adolphus was dead. The battle was not over, and the Imperial centre-left front line was shattered by massed salvos of musket and cannon fire from the elite Swedish regiments. As this front line retreated, the elite of Wallenstein's army marched forth and pinned the flower of the Swedish army, engaging it in a brutal melee. A contingent of Imperial cuirassiers then charged the flank of these elite colour regiments.
Oh, they got outflanked. Holy crap. Oldest trick in the book.
And all but annihilated them, destroying the cream of the Swedish army.
Ooh.
Meanwhile, the attack on the left was bogged down by the Imperial fortifications. The right wing was leaderless due to the king's apparent disappearance, and the central units had suffered a mauling. It was clear that the Swedish army was close to collapse, and so at 3 PM the lines pulled back and parted contact, retreating out of artillery range in order to reform. The army's command now passed to Duke Bernard, who
They're still gonna fight? I thought after the death of the king, they'd be like, you know what? Let's get out of here. No, they're still gonna fight. I mean, I'm not sure if they're aware of his death or not, or they're just like, I guess he's disappeared. But I'm amazed they're still gonna fight after that. I thought they would surely, like, let's get out of here. No, we're going. Okay.
was keen to attack again. He rallied his soldiers and moved the reserves, who had been expertly steadied by Kniefausen, to the front line. After a 30-minute interval, the depleted armies engaged again, and a savage combat began across the front. Massive cannonades and volley fire from muskets on both sides shredded infantry regiments so thoroughly that 2/3 of some units were gone.
Oh my gosh.
After darkness had fallen though, the Swedes finally captured the Imperial windmill battery. It was in vain. Witnessing the state of his brutalized and smashed army, the shaken and appalled Wallenstein signaled a retreat, believing there was no hope of victory.
So that's technically an L. So technically, yeah. The outcome, it feels like kind of like a very Pyrrhic victory for the Swedish. Yeah, they won, but they lost their king and also suffered a large amount of casualties. So I feel like calling this a Pyrrhic victory would feels appropriate to me. And since Wallenstein is the one who retreated because he thought he had lost, so I guess, yeah, a victory, though a Pyrrhic one. And again, I guess Gustavus got a win in death. He still got a win. But man, that was mainly due to his reforms, right? The way he reformed the Swedish army and made them so powerful, it proved his reforms were great. And that even after his death, just the great quality of his army could still secure a victory. Even though I keep calling it a Pyrrhic victory, right? My goodness. I still can't believe he died like that. That's insane to me.
Lützen had been an unmitigated slaughter on both sides.
But sure, they may have won that battle, but Wallenstein is still around, and he can easily not easily, but he can still be a huge threat. Like, who's gonna take the reins after now Gustavus is dead? Gustavus was the genius behind the Swedish army and the Protestants. So, like, I feel like in the long term, the Catholics are in the much better position just by Wallenstein still being around. Oh boy, that's a huge blow, man.
Sides, with the Swedes losing 10,000, while the Catholic casualties being more than 12,000. And although the Protestants won this battle, the loss of Gustavus Adolphus left the Protestant cause largely rudderless and changed the balance of power in Germany. Still, the war was far from over, and soon we will bring you more episodes covering the 30 Years' War.
That was shocking. I'm shocked right now. Dude, rip Gustavus, man. Rip the Lion of the North. But Wallenstein, who's gonna oppose him? Who can oppose him now? Gustavus was really the only, I feel like the only guy. John's not gonna do it. Frederick certainly isn't, like... My goodness. I have to watch the next episode. We'll get there tomorrow, guys. Wow.